Hey, it's Eugene Brooks, Director of Diversity Marketing with the Atlanta Braves, and this is Every ATLien is a Star with Black Forever. All right, so in the announcement, yes, I'm the Director of Diversity Marketing for the Atlanta Braves. I've been in Atlanta for about 15 or so years or more. Came from radio and the entertainment side, made the transition over into the sports side because that's where I wanted to go, because at the end of the day, you see where entertainment and sports are starting to really collide. And so I wanted to be a part of that movement, especially knowing the entertainment side and wanted to be able to represent people in a positive way on the sports side, because there's not a lot of people on the sports side who understand the culture. And so my job right now is to create the culture in a way that brings Atlanta together, from South Side, East Side, West Side, different nationalities, different ethnicities, and bringing us all together to know there's a one common goal, and that's to be successful. You know, I was the kid that watched every episode of the Grammys. You know, I watched, the American Music Awards. When Biggie talked about, the ride-on magazines, I was that kid that he was talking about, right? And so I think looking at that, like, my parents were like, okay, well, my dad is a principal, and my mom was like, okay, she's a nurse, and she's like, okay, so you gotta have an education backup. I wasn't trying to do that. Like, my plan A was to be here. That, coming out of college, you don't have any money, and so, but I knew I could cook and clean. So I went to my cousin, I was like, hey, I don't have no money, but I will cook for you and I'll clean for you if you let me move to Atlanta. And we had a family meeting, and she was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And so that's what I did. Wow. And so that's how I got to Atlanta. I think people don't really realize how family is important, and how, you have to learn to find family to be cool with them, because you never know how they can help you on your pathway to where you're gonna go. And I think people don't really realize too, is that people will help people if they see that you wanna help yourself. Unfortunately, people want somebody else to help them, but they don't wanna do the work. And so one of my other cousins was friends with somebody and referred me to the YMCA. Now, this wasn't in the music side, but I knew I needed to get some information and get some of where I needed to go. So I started working for the YMCA as a membership director. There I learned budgeting, I learned how to talk to people, I learned about nonprofits, I learned about community. Now, it wasn't in the music space, but however, I knew I needed to get some information and get educated on where I was trying to go, right? Because Atlanta's a big city at the time, and I needed to break it down. So I worked for the Y for like 6 years, and then I had a conversation with one of my mentors who's recently passed away, Simon, and who was on the radio at the time, and became really cool with him, and I told him I wanted to work in radio. He took a chance on me. He saw what I was doing, work ethic, we've been friends for a while. So I started working for Kiss 104. Worked for Kiss 104 in the promotions department, and then they launched a new station called 97.1 Jams. Got that job, and then that time I was in Cox working with Kiss 104, 97.1 Jams, 95.5 The Beat.
Talk to me a little bit about the Atlanta scene during that time. Like, can you paint a picture of just the city as a whole, and kind of what was going on during that time?
I mean, the city was on fire around that time. I think we had the Super Bowl right around that time. We had All-Star Game right around that time. The music as we know it then was, everybody was coming out. I mean, JD had everything on live. Diddy had everything on live. Every time you turn around, somebody from Atlanta was on some award show, or you had Outkast at the time, you had LaFace, you had Dark Studios or Dallas Austin. You had just every major artist was in Atlanta at that time. And I think when you look at it as a whole, I mean, I remember driving down Peachtree Street in Buckhead and looking at where LaFace Records was. I mean, this big ivory tower sitting up there, and you're like, man, I want to get up there one day. Music was everywhere. I mean, the people were everywhere. Every time you turn around, the clubs at the time, from Visions, to Atlanta Live, to 559, all these different concerts everywhere. I mean, it was such a movement at the time that it was just unlike what you've seen in the past, and everybody was trying to get here. Back then, radio was where records were broken. I mean, that's where records were broken back in the day. I mean, when you wanted to hear the new hot song, it was on the radio. There was always these specials that radio stations had, where they had New Music Mondays, where in the lobbies of all these radio stations, you had people, droves of people sitting in there trying to get in with the program director to play their record, right? I mean, you had some people that walked right past everybody because they knew the song was going to be a hit. Yeah, you got streaming now, but back then it was literally people walking in a door, presenting a freaking vinyl record and say, hey, play this. And that's how you found it. When you look at the sports gamut of everything from NFL, NBA, MLB, commercials, you see where they're using music going into commercial, right? They're using hot songs, they're using Travis Scott, they're using, Lil Yachty, Lil Uzi Vert. I mean, you see all these things they're using. I mean, you're looking at DJ Khaled. So I think when you look at that, I wanted to be a part of the process that brought that culture to the sports industry, because there are many times there are people who are sitting at these tables who don't look like us, but they only know what the nice record is, right? So I wanted to be a part of that process to be able to create that culture and to create some transparency and integrity as it relates to it, but also being the conduit for those teams or a team to be able to bring in artists to that. Any situation is about how you build a team, is that you have to recognize the talent that your team has. Or when you're pulling a team and trying to put together a team. And I think people don't pay attention to the talents that people have. Now, you're not always gonna have an A player, B player, C player, a top player. So how do you take the strengths of someone to bring it together to build a really good team? I think when you look at, as you build your team with your organization, it's like, what are the individual roles? And as long as everybody knows their role, then that's how you develop a great culture and a great successful team. Stick to what you know how to do and do it well, and then you add the team together to build it together, right? So when you talk about building a culture, it has to be it's about what do you want your culture to look like? Is it transparency? Is it success? You're not gonna win all the time. But it's also about how do you capitalize on when you lose? Or what do you define as a loss? Or what is your idea of winning? What does that look like? And the whole team and the whole culture has to be a part of that and has to agree with that.